So, I was thinking about this paper. We'd worked on this, Kenny and a couple other students of mine, we'd worked on this last spring. And I think really the way that you could best really kind of classify or kind of put this into kind of the context for folks on the street is really frustration, failure, right? Really all this stuff that we'd worked on was really kind of this classic element of how, right? Why people fail, why groups fail in order to kind of enact real change, okay? And from that failure and that frustration, we kind of started looking a little bit more at things about persistence, about how to leverage influence. And ultimately, from doing this and from some of the other projects, about really enacting significant change. And so this one paper here, this project, is part of a larger project I've been doing on citizen democracy. Citizen democracy really around environmental networks. And so this idea was not mine. This idea came from the Riverkeeper. So I take no credit for that. Kenny, some students of mine last spring, as part of a larger class, part of a bigger research project, we put it together. We worked collaboratively with the network, with the group, and put together a questionnaire. I had some questions I wanted to ask, etc. And ultimately what we're looking at are really two big issues, right? On the one hand, we wanted to say, okay, what really elicits effective communication? So in terms of legislators, what do legislators view as being effective, right? They're going to tell you everything, right? A whole litany of things, phone calls, I'm for the American people, I'm for, you name it, right? For my constituents. And at the same time, so we wanted to look at how they deemed effective communication. And then at the same time, we wanted to see how legislators communicate with the public, okay? And we looked at two states. We looked at New Jersey and PA. And we found, even though, right, the two politically distinct autonomous states, right, we did see some differences in our ability to connect with legislators. And I think in terms of the kind of failure rates or the success rates, we had far more success in PA. Right? I thought it was going to be the opposite. I had a lot of students working in Trenton for a variety of legislators, so I had some inside contacts, and so we thought, okay, that should be okay. I don't know anybody in PA, right? We don't know anyone there. We're going to try it. And, we don't know, right? So we would call up and say, we're from Ryder, working with the Delaware Riverkeeper Network. We're doing this survey on effective communication, okay? And we'd call the stats, we'd follow up, you name it, right? And it was an interesting, right, 3-week period when we did this last April to May. And so we did find some differences there, particularly in the ability to follow up, of tone, of the ability to get connected to actual members of the of either chamber, right? In the state, the House, in the PA and the Senate, and New Jersey, the Assembly and the State Senate. So, kind of giving you this idea, and bringing it back to the notion of citizen democracy. I think one of the big questions that we've been kind of wrestling with here is about the idea of legitimacy, political legitimacy, right, and representation. There's been a great deal of frustration in the public about the ability, right, of our elected officials to represent our interests. Whether they're huge, right, whether they're these mass movements or really kind of smaller communities. And so from this, some of the stuff that I've been doing are natural gas pipeline opposition networks, right? How they operate, how they communicate, how they express frustration, and how they really want to put pressure to as I mentioned before, enact change, right? At multiple levels, right? At the local level, the state level, and of course at the federal level. And so from that point of view, kind of to put this small scale project into the bigger picture, and I think that's kind of where I wanted to have a discussion. So I'm going to not go through all the prior research, and I'll present it, right? But the more I thought about this, we'll go through some of the data that we have, and I think what's important here is to have a discussion about really what strategies are effective. What do we know, and how do we understand how information is diffused, right? How does it spread beyond just simple social media, right? Petitions are not enough, right? Cross posts are not enough, right? And so ultimately, how do you get people to show up to meetings? How do you get people to talk to legislators? And ultimately, how do you put their feet to the fire, right? Because ultimately, if you look at this through the idea of kind of social capital, right? This is our most important asset that we all have, right? And so no matter, the more you show up, the more times you spend with legislators, right? They can only say no for so long because they actually, they end up working for us. And so in that sense, I think it's, I want to put that into the context of this study. So, can you want to do the slides? And then I'll just, so Kenny actually helped me with this project. So I'm going to just give the view and then he'll fill in a little bit with kind of the discussion. Because I think it's important because this project, the way that we kind of conceptualize it with the Riverkeeper Network was that we said, okay, let's see how we can get students involved. How can we contact and how can we find out things that perhaps others have been unable to kind of elicit? Really, responsiveness. How responsive and what in effect elicits change? Where do they take a phone call, right? And how do they elevate it to some type of action? Okay? Because this is, from an activist point of view, this is important. Right? I just, yesterday I met with an individual from local government, from my, a nice gentleman, but I spent a lot of time putting pressure on him. He was the mayor of my town, right? Spent a lot of time organizing groups and talking, and he always listened, very respectful. We were far different politically. But he came to talk to me about, I got some issues, and how do we enact some change? And I said, oh, okay, let's see what we can do. And so we talked a little bit about this. I was talking about what I was coming here, talking about this paper I've been thinking about, this research project. And so, so in that sense, really, there's this talk is really, I think, should have very practical applications for how we can make positive change. So you guys can all read. But basically, these are the two big questions we looked at: effective communication and how state legislators communicate their information, right? So the idea of kind of social network typically is a one-way stream of communication from legislators. For them, it's really a sense of self-promotion. In terms of effective means of communication, they're all going to tell you the same thing. It's, come see me, right? Do I go and I sit in your office? Do I not leave, right? Do I set up a meeting, right? Do I meet with a staffer, et cetera? Because meeting with staff is probably, you're probably going to be a little more successful than if you just met with the legislator. But the important thing is to build relationships. Building relationships and follow through. That's why I started talking about failure, frustration, right? Whenever you deal with the government, right, it's about persistence, gaining leverage, gaining influence. And so in that sense, you have to keep this in context that separated political powers, diffused political powers, can be daunting and can be problematic, but ultimately, the more you're able to kind of build these relationships with legislators, they know who you are, and you're able to kind of utilize other folks in your networks, you're going to be more successful. So you want to do that. Some of the methods, we did this last year, about 3 weeks. The big things, we started with what I mean by screening questions. We're asking, what do you do in your office? What type of calls do you deal with? Are you constituent relations, legislative relations? Are you chief of staff, et cetera? Kind of calibration questions. We're really kind of setting them up for so that what they do, and then we went into questions about how they respond. What they deemed as effective. And then we went on how they kind of communicate, what types of behavior or kind of practices they use. Students led this primarily. By the end of 3 weeks, at least they all knew who we were. If they didn't want to respond to us, they knew we kept calling, and they knew we would call every day. And then, of course, we got 62 out of 370, 17%. It's not great, but when I do national surveys, it's not that far off actually from, they're usually about 12 to 15% is kind of the industry standard. It's not great, but this is not necessarily a random sample. So, but just to give you a sense, it took us 3 weeks to get 62 interviews, right? So, and that's every day. So what's important here is, persistence. I'm going to just, I hate this slide, so just go to the next one. I hate this one too. All right, right there. So, sorry. I looked at it, I was like, oh, that's content everybody can read. Here's the big thing. Personalized contact, clear messages, right? In-person meetings when you can do it, right? Most of us, we have other lives as well. So this is not always the easiest thing to do. So in that sense, in terms of kind of networks, in terms of your own networks, is being able to kind of facilitate at least some type of follow-up. If I can't do it, can someone else please follow up, etc. The other big thing in terms of prior research, so there are questions about what's most effective. Email is not that effective, right? The only type of, particularly if it's a what do you call it, petition or form email, right? Because of the volume and because of, Sheffer had done, she had done a big project in 2003 of state legislators in Illinois. She had found this through other interviews. We'd found this, so the keyword search, right? The kind of way they're able to sift through in terms of responding. What they do like, of course, are personalized email, right? Personalized messages. And so in that sense, I think it's only a matter of time before mass emails can be kind of personalized. But generally, that's one of the big things found. The other element here, Mooney, he had done a study in '93 of state legislators in Washington State, and he found that, look, not every legislator is going to be responsive to you. They're not all created equal, right? And so what happens, of course, is that there are going to be folks who are going to be more receptive to your message than others. And so in this sense, it's really important within your network to talk about, really, to be able to talk the same language. And I think that's important in your ability to kind of personalize this. So one of the things, we had asked an open-ended question, okay? And so from legislators, we had asked, okay, what do you define as effective, right? And so within our study, we found things that a message has to be personal, it has to be clear. There's always good having meetings are good, right? I took students in the fall. I took 25 students to go see one of our state assemblymen to go talk about getting a resolution on the Penn East pipeline to kind of get it out of committee. You show up with 25 students. It's always, we had a good talk. We didn't get exactly what we wanted out, but now we can follow up. And that's what I mean in terms of persistence, etc. The other big thing here is, problems and solutions. Within the realm of public policy, right, legislators don't necessarily like problems unless a solution is coupled with it, right? There are no public problems unless you can and so in the world of in the literature and policy entrepreneurship, right, there's this notion of being able to kind of couple. You have a public problem, you have the political problem, and you couple some type of policy to it, you're going to be more successful. Yeah. So here's so we looked at, this is one of the responses here. This is so just kind of ranked. There's more options, of course, but generally these were the real top ones. Right, most effective. Your in-person meeting, these personalized letter, emails, and phone calls. I know that there's this whole. I'm on this group within. I live in Mercer County, New Jersey, and there's this whole movement now about how to continue contacting your federal legislators, right? So you kind of shift phone duties at your home, etc. I think that's pretty cool. But you can see, at least at the state level, it's relatively effective, in terms of what they're defining. Right. So again, if you were to contact, right, what would you use, right? Meeting, phone, email, personal letter. Again, right? They're following through the same methods. Go ahead. All right. Oof. So these were a series of statements I found within another study of I think it was North Carolina state legislators. But I tweaked it a little bit. We tweaked these statements, right, for PA and New Jersey, and you can see, right, civil. Well, sometimes I don't know. What does civil mean, right? Does that mean that that I'm not persistent? I kind of don't stand my ground? Because I think that's for them, they just kind of want to make everybody happy. And I think it's important from the point of view of, yes, being civil, not yelling, of course, but really not wavering at the same time your position. You treat them as humans, but you still have to be direct, right? Of course, the issue and what needs to be done, this is a big thing, right? So all of us know the issues, and all of us have a pretty good idea about what things can be done, right? Particularly if you start looking at the issue of kind of land use, of environmental quality, of public health, et cetera, right? These are not daunting, and right? We have to legitimate, right? They said not fear-based or are heard, right? So in that sense, it's not this kind of means of being too apocalyptic, right? It accurately conveys. This is important. If you don't know, right? I don't know. I'll get back to you. It's not a big deal, right? And then, it's great because the follow-up, right? The more contact you have, the more successful you're going to be. We also looked at conveying a point of view that supports, but this is something, this is, I thought, very interesting, right? They rejected this. Effective communication comes from individuals and organizations that already have an existing relationship with the legislator. No special interests involved, right? I found this to be a disconnect. This was a disconnect from really kind of the other work that was done by Mooney and Weatherford, right, in the 90s, when they're looking at state legislators, particularly about this idea about talking the same language and which groups had more success than others, depending on the member. So I do think that there was some politicking here in the survey. So how do they communicate? Again, as of now, social media is really a form of self-promotion. Now, I just got a paper from another researcher that was very interesting, looking at use of Twitter at members at the federal level. Okay, I didn't put it in here because I was still going through. But one of the key findings, I think, between Democrats and Republicans at the national level, right, and the House of Representatives, is the use of Twitter by Republicans are far more active and frequent than Democrats. Could be a variety of reasons, and they're more personalized in their messages. That could be, the old adage, right? Democrats govern people, Republicans govern land, right? I don't know, but it's an interesting take. Just in terms of these were some computer scientists over at Stevens that were looking at this, but they were just kind of mining out messages and frequency of messages. But generally, you see here, of course, your Facebook, your form emails they send out, sometimes these personal letters, return calls and meetings, etc. But not a lot of things when you get into when they kind of send out form letters, etc. This seems to be their big element. And again, what they use in terms of communication. So getting them and getting back to email. I think text messaging is downplayed here, probably because they don't want to give us their phone number. But generally, when we were contacted, we would do it, right? We started this off by pinging them with an email, right? Then we would go on Facebook and we'd get them there, right? This was the start. Hey, we're going to start calling you in a week, okay? And then we started calling, right? Then at the same time, we would start following up again. Hey, we're coming. Hear us, right? And then we would continue to call. We'd say, okay, not there. And then what we'd do between students, we'd have a detailed call sheet. And on that call sheet, we'd get the name. Who did we just talk to, right? We would talk to that person, and then we'd follow up. We'd say, okay, we're following up on this day, right? We'd say, if that staffer wasn't there, we'd say, this is who we talked to. And then if we weren't getting it, we'd say, okay, who's the chief of staff? Who's the policy director, right? This is what we're doing. And from that, I would ping them again, and I'd say, hey, we talked to you. We talked to this person. This student talked to you. Right now, I'm personalizing it, because embedded within this, we figured, okay, we're not going to get exactly we have this survey going on, but now let's do somewhat of not a formal experiment, but a quasi experiment. How do you get their attention, and how, right? So we figured it took right, for all of our students who were making calls, on average, they did about 100 calls each, right? And in order to kind of get to a completed survey, right, it would take one office, you would take between 5 and 10 times. And that's in addition to me getting them, hey, we're here, we're looking, and and so what happened at the end of the study? Hey, we know you, Brogan. We know your students. We understand. We're not doing it. Or just send it, we'll do it, we'll send it back to you. Right? So what was interesting at the end, just in this 3-week period, and I think this is important because in 3 weeks, it's not some of you guys think of geological time, right? But political time, that's not a lot of, so you're coming into a campaign, right? I think this is effective, particularly from kind of citizen activist point of view. This is not that hard. And if you can get a group, if you could get really a group of 8 to 10 people, different times. And the other big thing that we found, Friday afternoons. I couldn't believe it. I thought everybody would, but they're pretty loose in the state legislative offices on Friday afternoons. And they're like, sure, let's talk. And which I was surprised. Yeah. A long week of listening to special interests. Anyway, let's go to the next one. Frequency. Okay, so this was on a scale from 0 to 10. And what we did is we asked the legislators, okay, from all groups, and then we said from environmental groups. So we asked them, what type of communication do you hear? And so you can see on average, right? So this range is 10 being the highest. And so if you look here at all groups, so they're spending a lot more time with other issues. And so this is, I think, an opportunity to, I think there's a lot of room for growth here within the environmental, I'm not going to say movement, but the environmental kind of policy space, right? Because generally they're dealing a lot with education, health, to some degree they said law enforcement. But I think here this is one of the big areas. And so in terms of communication, of course, email, right? You see here, right? Every form letters, environmentalists are pretty close on average. Phone calls getting beaten. There's an area, I think, for improvement. Personalized letter, again. In-person meetings. This could also be so in fairness, as a social scientist, are these groups really comparable? Can you make a comparability for one sector versus the whole? Well, no. But still, I still think it elicits some important information here. So we could make an adjustment here, okay? It doesn't exactly the starkness of the two, but kind of texts and Facebook, petitions are essentially equal here. Other, I don't even know what, I just put other there. But I think here, there's room, personalized contact. And one of the things that I've found in the, what year is this, 2017 now? Right, so the pipeline stuff I got involved about 3 years ago. Right, as things were kind of breaking up, from kind of fracking and this expansion of getting what they called hard to reach gas out to the national market. I think what I've found is that there are really two types of well, in fairness, there's a lot of environmental groups, but you have kind of the groups that have large donors, right? They have really no membership, and then you have groups with large membership, right? Who can really enact change. So in the literature, you have this group that, right? You have these insider groups, outsider groups, and thresholder groups, right? Outsider groups are the folks like Latin American democracy, right? You come out, you toss over some buses, and you kind of shut down the city, right? You get some action, and you got folks in the political party saying, okay, let's talk now, right? You got other folks who are just in there kind of lobbying, and having some success, moderate success, etc. And I think what I learned in a lot of this is the differences here between the groups, that oftentimes these thresholder groups are probably probably a little more successful than simply these insider groups. And here's my point. Thresholder groups need members. They need folks to get involved, right? And I think, for instance, there's a plug for the Riverkeeper Network. I think it's an important way that they keep in contact with their members. And in this sense, I think this is an important way. Sierra does this as well. They've got a pretty good membership, right? So it's it's kind of more of a kind of horizontal network, etc. And so in this kind of diffused network, I think there's a lot of potential of all the good things that have been done, but I think there can be also other things to kind of harness this ability to kind of to get to whether in Harrisburg or members in Trenton or in Albany. Okay, let's go to the next one. So, okay, so this was a question about, on average, how, so I don't know. Let me just, I saw this question, we put it in, and I was kind of like, I don't think we're going to get the best response on this, okay? Because how many contacts does it take, right? We know they're going to say every contact's important to me because I'm elected by the people, right? So we know that. So that was partly why I embedded this little ping, 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 just to see if that matched this, right? So almost half said, any contact's important to me. Surprise, surprise, right? Politicians are for, what is it, for motherhood, for America, you name it, right there. Growth is good, deficits are bad, whatever it may be, right? So I knew that this question, right, we have what they're telling us and we have the behavior, right? I never always did what my mom told me to do. Most of the time, but I still have a clear conscience, it's okay. So in this sense, how many times, well, what did I say, Kenny, before, right? How many, about 100 calls? Yeah. And about, 5 to 10 times actually talking to somebody. It wasn't just, hey, ring, 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 calling, right? No one there, call. Nope, not here, boom, right? So we understood that over a 3-week period, there were a lot of phone calls being made. And every day, I'm sending out not mass emails to them, I'm sending out personalized emails, right? 'Cause luckily, and some of the emails were wrong. That was the thing, crazy thing, right? How can the public service not have correct email? So, yeah, phone lines went dead. So we'd have to go back and follow up with them. What is your email, right? Oh, they're no longer in office. Okay, great. What is your email? Oh, and getting their phone number, getting other phone numbers, getting cell phone numbers, et cetera. So it took a lot more. So this is I would say it's probably, you're getting to this section here about contacts, right? And so I think, personally, people are like, students hated making the phone calls. They hated it. They said, I don't like doing this. I don't feel good. Even if I have a script, right? Kenny and his folks said, this script is dumb. Let's get rid of this script. Let's just talk to them. Because, they start making enough phone calls. And I told students, look, I think a good skill, and this is for everybody, a good skill is asking somebody to do something on your behalf. You're not asking them to do something that will hurt them or to do something that's wrong. You're asking them to do something that they are charged to do. And they have to respond. They have to. They have to be nice to you, right? You're not selling them something, right? You're not asking them to give something away. You're just asking them, will you hear me? What can we do to kind of move this forward? What are some things that you could suggest that I can do on your behalf, if you choose not to do it, to kind of push things forward? And so in that sense, students felt better about it, right? I always had some kind of donut or whatever when they're making phone calls. But generally, I think that's important. And when you talk to folks outside, just remind, it's not a big deal. Just call. I know some people are like, I don't like calling, I want to write, etc. But it's okay. Not everyone wants to do this. But if you do it, I think as a community, if you get folks say, hey, let's sit, I'll make a phone call, you make a phone call. And it's kind of funny. When folks, who, what? Nobody's here, right? It's amazing how many people are not in the office, right? When you start calling some of these state legislative offices. So in that sense, I think it's, of all of this stuff, it's really kind of collective behavior, right? And, it's not enough to kind of feel like, well, my place within the kind of the political, the environmental world is that, I'm kind of, I'm not going to be so, I'm going to be biocentric, right? I'm going to kind of have this view of kind of this deep ecological consciousness, of all these things within, that's not enough, right? This notion of kind of, McKibben and all these guys, right? It requires really the ability for us to engage the political structure, right? We all have our, as social scientists say, our agency, our ability to act, okay? Because it's not enough to kind of turn into ourselves and say, I'm doing the right things, right? I'm going vegetarian 3 times a week, right? I'm conscious about my footprint. At the same time, though, it's important that within kind of the dominant structure that you exhibit your power, your equality, right? And so I think that's important. Reading this, right? Because I think it's an interesting. My whole point here. It's an interesting kind of disconnect between reality and what they want you to hear. All right. So I'm almost done. As I mentioned, most personalized effectiveness. that contain problems and solutions. And I'll give you guys, the slides, so don't worry, I'll have them all up for you. And then I can give you more data, whatever you need. Tools, let's go to the next one, Ken. Clear, concise, frequent, civil, again, following characteristics. Two-way, they want it to be two-way, so it's a discussion. They don't want it to be hostile, right? So these are their words here. Both parties understand. Ineffective or one-sided conversation. Someone's inflexible. That sounds like me. Balance focused. I don't know. I'm calling them. It's not like, hey, you want to talk about the Phillies or the Yankees? No, I'm calling you because there's a problem. Do your job. Anyway, aggressive, hostile, unclear, non-specific. Can you imagine a politician saying unclear or non-specific? I think that's kind of funny. All right, keep going. I know this is being taped, but whatever. Anyway, so again, as I mentioned, the disconnect. Right, there is a disconnect here, what they're telling us. They have different definitions. They seem to be focused on the results of a conversation. Legislators are more concerned with availability and accessibility. The other big thing that, so if we kind of put this out to the community, I think one of the big things in terms of information sharing, Facebook's effective and everything else, but what I've found is that most people are finding out about issues and problems, friends and neighbors, right, family, coworkers, and a lot through the local press. And so I think, and again, this is pure conjecture, right? If you want to get these folks to listen to, yes, you call them, but you also utilize, you make friends, right, with the local outlets, whether they're, the kind of new blogs that are taking over from for some of the, to shame some of the dying press, the local press, but also to, kind of alternate letters, editor, et cetera. These types of things, getting, talk to reporters, et cetera. Let them, you give them some things, of course, they'll go out and they'll find out ways to kind of balance what you've told them. But I think that's an important finding. Lessons learned, okay, logistics matter, right? So when you're going to set up your call logs, have the numbers right. Have a strategy, the ping strategy as well as the phone strategy, right? The kind of and have the follow-up. Make sure, and it's okay. I mean, now it's pretty cool, right? Between simple things like Google Forms, et cetera, right? You can do just virtual call logs, so people do not have to necessarily be in the same physical space in order to kind of follow up, right? So let's say if I made calls from let's say during a particular period to legislators, or I was sending email. Maybe I made a call, et cetera. I can just log it in, and then I can come in and say, okay, this was done. Now I can start doing it. So it's not, you don't necessarily always have to be in the same spot. Follow-up is important. And then, of course, contact style. You always want to be cordial, but you want to make sure that you're direct and you're effective in terms of making sure they understand exactly what you're telling them. All right, I'm done. So I kind of want to open this up to some discussion, et cetera, some questions here, particularly some of the issues you guys are facing. Yeah.
Do you have any insight you can give us about how incoming communications are handled in legislative offices? I mean, I'll tell you what I picture. I don't know where I would glean this from, but I picture a bunch of interns sitting at desks in some nondescript room, taking in emails and phone calls, and they have some sort of routine that they're supposed to go through with each thing, and then they respond, and that very few of them actually get to the actual legislator. That's my impression. I don't know if that's true or not.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah. So they have, and
they have a little, I also left this out, they have a clipboard, and they have, across the top it says issues, and then they put little click marks. This issue has got to do with water, this one's got to do with healthcare, this one's positive, negative, plus, minus, and that's what I figure. And then somebody tallies at the end of the day and hands it to the legislator, and then he knows, 50% of the people today cared about this.
Right.
And that's all I can picture. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I mean, I know this from dealing with when I send students to intern, particularly in the New Jersey State House. So they'll have escaping me right now, but they basically have these filters that'll come in first for email. They'll kind of look for keywords, et cetera, and they'll kind of push them here.
It's a technical filter.
Yeah, and then they'll start looking at them, and then so they'll split most of them over here, and then the ones that kind of get through that first pass, they'll start going through. whether they're usually interns, and then if they are, they'll kind of put the log in, and of course, if depending on the constituent relations, in terms of their workload, they'll take a look at it. And they'll also try to look at if there's a hotspot issue, right? But they'll keep, okay, things are okay, things seem okay right now, and then I think the other thing is that I've learned from talking to folks on the other side there, the cynicism amongst staffers. Oh, here's another person calling to yell at me or whatever, another person, that's going to tell me that the world's going to end, And so, yeah, you're right. There is this disconnect, right? This kind of, to some degree, almost this bunker mentality, right? About the public's trying to contact me. Oh no, right? Can you believe that? And so, yeah, I think that's one thing.
At the very least, it's an avalanche, and I need some buffering.
Yeah. And in fact, I think that's actually a positive thing within the ability of the environmental movement to utilize public comments, petitions, commenting, to really force them to this, as you mentioned, I like this avalanche, right? How to be spot on when all of a sudden even though there's a short period, how you hit it immediately, because they'll still see that as intense, right? In terms of just volume. And so, another colleague of mine, a computer scientist, we had been going through work on public comments for the Penn East pipeline. We're going to do a comparative on another one, and we've just used simple analytics to filter through all 3,000 these detailed minutes to look at common themes, right? And to see common themes about what people are saying and what they're talking about, etc. And so here's my point: if you're effective in terms of coordinating enough common themes, sending them off, right? They're going to have to, because the way the technology is, they're going to start seeing a pattern. Right? If you start using, segmentation, if you start using, these key terms, right? Water quality, arsenic, you name it. And what's cool is that you can make it geographically specific. So the reason why I liked Penn East was that you had two states with different environmental issues to some degree and different kind of socio-political kind of economic issues, and you saw to some degree the PA people were saying something slightly different than New Jersey people, right, about the same problem. And when you quickly started looking at this, you could see distinctiveness. Now, they didn't contradict each other, but they were enough, I think, in organizing. Here is our issue based on this project. Now let's get it out there. And so coming back to your comment, I think that's also important. So to kind of beat the algorithms, if you can coordinate these mass communication, right, to start having some type of personalized message that does demonstrate some pattern, yes, they're going to have to start listening.
With a common theme.
Yeah.
So if everyone's going to say, just as an example, talk about the Affordable Care Act,
yep.
You should say Affordable Care Act and not someone say Obamacare and other people say Affordable Care Act,
yeah.
Because they might not wind up in the same bucket when it comes time for analysis.
It depends on how many times people are doing it. Yeah, but yeah, so there's some judgment. So it's kind of like so when you take out these, so it's kind of it's a little simplified way of looking at, like, kind of what the biologists will do, like kind of cluster analysis for kind of some type of taxonomy. So these words will start hanging on to larger themes. So what they'll do is they'll throw it out. So if Obamacare is only used a couple times out of like 10,000 instances, yeah, it'll be kind of pushed over here, but they'll use healthcare. So in that sense, it's not, you don't necessarily always have to use the same words, because it'll kind of group it up to theme, etc. So typically we found safety, jobs, and in the environment there's like 5, 6, right, up to 15 different themes. That was actually the dominant. So the whole jobs, growth versus environment argument you have. That within that case, right, the environmentalists, it was insane how much, just in terms of commenting, they went up.
If you were to talk about, say, the Penn East example, if you use the word Penn East, that's very specific, but if you're talking about water quality, if you're talking about fracking, if you put those two things in the same email, then does that sort of dilute the message, because it's both about water quality and fracking? But then what's the guy supposed to do with it when he gets it in his email? Does he put it in, I care about water quality, or I care about fracking? So what kind of decision process a judgment process does somebody have to do when they're processing that communication?
I don't know from what they would do in a staffer's office. I do know that from from the way that we've looked at the kind of the core kind of text mining, that what it would do is it would treat that fracking issue, the pipeline issue, the water issue as one theme, but three hits on that same theme.
That's good to know.
Yeah.
But you're talking about qualitative, I
Yeah.
also do a lot of qualitative
Yeah.
research. You're talking about qualitative research, how staff and I've also interned
Yeah.
at my congressperson's office, how staff operationalizes is not as sophisticated as a researcher
Yeah.
who's doing text line analysis of transcripts. So the staff are making a lot of judgment calls.
Where do they get their guidance from?
They create a lot of operations, just like an insurance company or a small business creates their own operations inside. And so well-established staffers are coveted because they bring really good operations to an office. And they'll set up logs, and it is interns going and saying, we received this email, we received this phone call, we received this letter, and letters matter more. Call matters more, and email matters more. Social media doesn't count at all right now. But that's how it was 15 years ago.
It's not that much different now.
But but it's all like individual staff members setting up processes to manage the workflows like you would in any small business office. There's no one way that these offices run, to my knowledge.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Any suggestions on making a clear message?
I think in terms of, they were kind of being concise. I think
Fewer words?
Yeah, I think making sure that first is that they understand the problem, so you understand who you are, and here's the issue and how it impacts me and how it impacts my community and how it impacts you. And I think that is being clear, and I think if you can, here I am talking about effective communication. Some of those slides are terrible, right? I had loads of text. If you can distill it down, right? Because typically a policymaker will, so for instance, even if you give them a policy brief, they're going to spend about 10 seconds looking at it, right? So if you can get that message within that realm of reading it, I got it, okay? And then they can go back and look more for the context. So I think that's the big thing, is to get that attention, understand, really everybody skims, right? So kind of getting that movement, sorry.
Oh, no, I was going to ask
You want to add?
No, I was going to ask a follow-up.
Oh, okay. Is that,
Yeah, that was good.
yeah.
10 seconds.
I mean, get your problem.
That's what I'm aiming for.
Yeah, tell them who you are, where you live. Here's the problem. Here's how it impacts me, and here's how it impacts you. I think that's important.
And it's sort of like 2 sentences in an email.
Yeah.
That's all you really need.
Yeah. And
You need to educate them, right? So
Yeah.
you just basically need to state the case so they know that you, the constituent, has this belief and
yeah.
it's important to you in the way you vote, blah, blah, blah.
And you tell them I'm going to follow up with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you handle, so I do a lot of work where I'm contacting someone and I'm not their voter.
Uh-huh.
How do you handle, and really good elected officials ask in a very quick way where you live,
Mhm.
and they're doing it so that they know if you're their voter. How do you handle that as an advocate?
Yeah, I think.
I know why they're doing it.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so I live in New York and I was calling New Jersey and PA people. So for me personally, I would say that I am a student at Rider University in this area of New Jersey. So generally that would tie back at least the Jersey people. For PA, depending on where they are, they may or may not know what Rider is. But I would say where you work or what your organization does in the area would help. Anything that ties you to
Their district.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, if you have some friends or family. I mean, that's the big strategy right now. Do you have a friend in a red district? Can you, if they're not going to contact you, say, hey, I got a lot of family. I moved from there, but I got a lot of family in that area, and they're as concerned as I am about this issue. Granted, they'll be polite. They'll still kind of put you here, but that's one thing. That's one of the I know the strategies going around now. Yeah.
Well, about the persistence thing. I mean, if you're the person who calls every day about the same issue, are they just gonna filter you out or say, okay, I already heard from you, I really don't?
If
You
you're,
still have to document it, right?
yeah, they still document it, and then
Until they started asking me for my name and address, I'm wondering, it's okay, so I call, every week or something. Does that only count once? I mean, am I wasting my time making a multiple phone calls?
I think the
Should
more-
pretend to be somebody else or what?
I think the more you call, like, so we were creative. Hey, so we said, we just called yesterday. This is what we're doing today. You know, what's going on? You know, we would just try to have fun with it as well. We'd call people. And I think that's, it doesn't always work for everybody, but I think the frequency is, you know, because lobbyists are doing the same thing. They're always in contact, you know? And I know we're not lobbyists at the same level, but I know that we're citizen lobbyists, right? That the more engaged, the more organized, right? It's you know, in politics, yeah, money, right? But really, ultimately, the best organized groups are the ones that are most successful, right? Money helps get you organized. It's an important resource, but I think, you know, kind of getting things moving, but it is one factor. And so I think, you know, to the comment, I think it's important to, if you can at least establish a relationship, you know, and so if you can personalize it with the office. I talked to the intern Kenny yesterday.
So you can ask them for their name.
Yeah.
They are too.
Yeah, you know my name. What's your name, right? So that's the way I would. And if you call and, you know, civil. If you call and you tell them what's going on, you tell them, you know, you're not completely hostile to them. I think it's fine. We were doing that. You know, we're kind of having fun. Yeah. Then why have you responded? Right. So yeah.
I've attended a post-election forum at Penn Future
Yeah.
put on with conservation voters. I interviewed a woman who was in the council that advised the president on environmental issues.
Yeah.
Other things that I've gone to recently, I keep hearing the same statement that legislators find it very surprising when they learn that constituents think their voice doesn't matter.
Yeah.
That the legislators say, you know, we have to make these decisions so fast. These bills are sliding past us all the time. We're trying to capture. We don't understand. We don't know. We need to hear from you
Right.
so that we understand. But so how do you get what you know, someone like Riverkeeper that has all this knowledge,
Yeah.
to pass this algorithm
Yeah.
into the knowledge, to make it be true knowledge in your legislator's mind? Like how do you bridge that?
You know, I haven't done a lot of research on that, but I think what I've seen just from as a concerned citizen, I personally think what's been effective are, so they give you some boilerplate talking points on an issue, because, you know, I'll get stuff, I'm like, I don't know anything about that, but you want me to call? Okay. So I start looking, and so they give you this, and you can have a few different statements they'll give you kind of set up. Because for instance, members of Congress, state legislatures, not to some degree, I guess, but I know when members of Congress, during any given 2-year period, they make votes, they make about 2,000 to 3,000 votes, right? And during those votes, there's some procedural votes, there's some substantive votes, but most of those, you know, it is to some degree in the House of Representatives, there's a division of labor. So there, to some degree, you're going to have very knowledgeable staffers and members. The Senate, they're useless because they're on multiple committees, right? Forget them all running for president. But the most effective way for the Senate is to get to their policy people. Because even when they come into, in Congress, I'm surprised they said legislators don't know, because some of the times the senators have no idea. When they get into kind of these joint conferences to write a bill, so you have a bill, you got to get it passed through both houses before it goes to the president. So they'll come to these small committees. So there's like no rules at that point. Oftentimes, what happens, the member of the House is talking to that senator's policy person for the bill, because the senator is probably sitting on 5, 10 different committees, doesn't know the details, and so in that sense, I think educating, I think, is important. Having these, distilling this out, but also getting to some senators are going to be pretty good, you know, on this issue. Casey's pretty. I think
He spoke at the Penn Future.
yeah. So if you get him on whatever, probably guns or
Yeah.
coal or
Yeah.
natural gas, he'll already have a position on it.
Right.
But it still doesn't hurt to kind of you get to him, but get into the staffers, and if you can. So like Riverkeeper, you know, I know you always work on getting that. Who are the people? Who are the people that matter the most in those offices? And sometimes you can't find them on the website, so it's important to kind of work through. But I think that's one effective way to get to them. Members of the House, I think, are much easier to get to.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, members of the House, I mean, that's the nice thing. we all criticize that, but typically it's a much more open branch. Not as much as we'd like it to be, but yeah.
I think it's time.
Okay.
So, I'm thinking about, well, my question is, this research, you were asking them to do something, which was to fill out an interview, to get an interview, to fill out a form or get an interview, right?
Yeah.
And so you were called repeatedly to that end. If you are contacting an elected official, state or federal, and they've already made their position known, I'm for it or I'm against it, do you find it helpful to call them back and say, I know you're against it, but I'm for it, and here's why you should change your mind? So do those repeated calls help as well, or is it just a repeated call to get a meeting with policy guy or Congressman X?
Yeah, there's a lot there, but I'm just going to be, I think the most effective means of your time. I think there's some people you're not going to change their mind. I think it's important to get to your friends or those who are kind of in the swing and say, even if they're going to vote against or vote, tell them why. But there's some folks who may be so opposed that sometimes and I think that leads to collective frustration with folks. So coming back to the district issue, if your member is not a friend to your issues, but they may be a friend to you on other things, that's one way to get a relationship with them, because there's going to be something you're going to agree upon, right? But at the same time, I think the efforts as well is to get to others, even if they're outside of your district, about to inform them, good vote. We like that. So that establishing that relationship, I think, is important. So, but again, it's being strategic to some degree, because your time's as important as theirs.
I'd like to remind people that they need continuing education units. We have the form to fill out.
Well, I really appreciate being invited, doing this project, and really, your comments and questions are very helpful, particularly for me, kind of going back into rethinking some of this project, some of the stuff we're doing. So, thank you.
Thank you.